thank you for everybody who's joined today. So we've got 4 lovely people who are joining us. We've got lovely Sabah, which some of you may recognize who's come in before. We've got lovely Samson and Nirali and Igor with us today. We're going to be talking about how their faith communities have been affected by lockdown and what they've been doing amongst their communities to help support them. We will be holding a brief Q&A session at the end. So if you would like to ask a question, you can just raise your hand and the lovely Ben will unmute you so you can ask the question. So we'll kind of quickly just go around so that everybody can introduce themselves. So I'll go in order as it is on my screen. So Sabah, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and what community you're from?
Good morning. My name is Ahmedi. I am 26 years old. I'm one of Britain's youngest Imams. I am from the Ahmedi Muslim community. I'm currently working in the press office of the Ahmedi Muslim community. I'm an Instagrammer, coffee lover, CrossFitter, and a father of 2. And that is basically me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Samson, if you'd lovely to introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Pastor Samson Baptist. I'm the senior pastor of Flowing Rivers International. I am older than 26 years old, and that's what I'm saying. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You know, I pastor a community of people within the Dagenham area, Barking and Dagenham area. However, our reach is missional, which goes international, local, and also national. I'm a father of 3 and married to one woman, and loving this opportunity to share with everyone.
Thank you, Samson. Nirali, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please.
Hello everyone, my name's Nirali. I am currently studying physics and philosophy at King's College London, and I'm the current president of the Philosophy Society there. I've been very interested in Hindu ideologies and beliefs for a while now, and I am a practicing Hindu myself.
And Igor.
Hello, my name is Igor Zinkov. I'm a rabbi at the Liberal Jewish Synagogue in St. John's Wood, and I am like Sabah, a huge coffee lover.
So we'll kind of just kick off, and we'll kind of, obviously, with everything that's happened with COVID, particularly lockdown when it first started, which was, comparison to now, was very different, because I definitely feel more free than I have done in the last however months. But obviously with lockdown, how was it affecting your communities, and what were you doing to help support that? Does anyone want to kick off? Go on, Sabah.
It might be the case. So, for a lot of faiths, all faiths, all places of worship were closed. So congregational worship in the physical form was not possible. And for Muslims, that is an integral part of faith, and prayer is praying in the mosque, as that is the house of God. The mosques were closed, and we been then encouraged by the Caliph of the community to pray at home in congregation and increase your own spirituality and your knowledge about your faith. And that's what we did. And then as an individual, I then went to Instagram. I did Instagram lives 4 or 5 times a week, where I talked about faith, hope, positivity, and encouraged people to carry on praying the way they prayed, whether they were meditating or they're praying or prostrating, whatever their form of worship might be, and just giving them hope that, look, after every hardship comes ease. And that's what the Holy Quran teaches. That was me as an individual on social media. But as a community, we then took to social media and organised quizzes, organised secular lectures, religious lectures for the members of the community. So we even had PT sessions on YouTube. We had lectures for the youth. We had tutoring for the kids of maths and English. So our infrastructure for the youth is solid enough that whatever happens in the mosque, classes wise, we then just migrated that onto social media. So we use Kahoot, we use Zoom, and whoever's got shares in Zoom now are absolutely laughing because they've made it in life. They might as well pack up and retire. But yeah, we were using social media to facilitate our interaction with our members of the community. So as a community, that's what we did, helping our community directly themselves.
Oh, okay. Samson, how did it with your community?
Yeah, so I think in a similar way, I guess for Christians, for a long time, the whole idea of a place of gathering has always, or should have been, second place. somehow the media has made that like the main thing over time, and we've not really helped the cause. But ideally, one of the things that we were told as we transitioned from the temple, I'm sure Rabbi would give me a whole lesson on that particular one, but we transitioned from the temple being a physical place to your body being the temple. But a place of gathering has kind of made people to forget that your body is actually the primary temple of where the Holy Spirit of God lives. Now, lockdown brought that notion straight bang in your face, where we could not go into a gathering, but you now had to recognize that the Spirit of God dwells with you. God is there with you in your home. Your first church, as it were, is your family, and really living and loving that. So on a personal basis for the individual members, it was an encouragement. We've always been encouraging the congregants in Flowing Rivers that, look, when we gather, we gather, we call it the pit stop. You know, in a Formula One race, the pit stop is where you come, you drive in there just to get, patched up, fueled up, but you're then released to go back out, and you win the race not in the pit stop, you win the race on the track. But too many people have turned the pit stop to the place where you just come, you rejoice, Christians are known for that, banging music, all of that kind of stuff, blah, 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 and then they go out and they just kind of submarine and dive, and they're like, where are you guys? That was going on. COVID really pushed that back out. And in terms of serving the community, we started up a befriending service for those who are isolating. We've started up food drops with a local food bank, where we're dropping off food in different places. So the congregants have been almost like commissioned into work. Like, look, this is where we are called for such a time like this, to go out and shine your light and be the light that is out there. We've got also many other schemes, but I don't want to hug up the conversation for now. We'll come back to those. Yeah. We'll come back to those later on.
What's definitely been interesting, I think, throughout this whole process is how inventive and creative people have become, and like finding different solutions to things that we probably would have just never thought about before. Nirali, how's it been within the Hindu community?
So I've had the pleasure of witnessing a lot of Hindu organizations around the country doing a various amount of things. I think one of the main things that is within Hinduism is the concept of seva, and of serving others. And with all the temples closed, a lot of the time, often volunteers served others within the temple when people came to the temple to eat or to pray. And now suddenly, when everything was closed, there was a sudden loss of how can we help other people now when we're just stuck at home. And I've seen, I think it was the Edinburgh Hindu Temple, which had like a Help the Neighbour campaign. So when the stockpiling was happening, they made sure that those who needed it were still able to access resources. I think the Newcastle Hindu Temple was the one so there were lots of Indian students that were stranded here because they couldn't leave. And so they were giving them emergency care packages. I believe it was the Neasden Temple that had done, so I think I was involved in this too with my mother. We did calls to the vulnerable. So I think they did over total, 12,000 calls to vulnerable people, which is insane.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to be a small part of that. And I think around over 5,500 hot meals, which is something that I've seen in various organizations around the country. I think one of the important things that the Hindu organizations did, which of course things like this, giving out PPE and food and stuff, can be done by any organization. It doesn't need to have done by religious organizations as such, but they also released videos on physical health and mental health, which I thought was really important, especially because South Asians are notorious for eating their fried food. And while stuck at home, nobody's going to go out and do exercise, especially the elderly. And mental health stigma is quite large and prominent in the South Asian community. And so putting out videos, especially coming from a religious organization that people respect, they're going to actually listen to that. They're not going to think, oh, this is just some millennial thing, that mental health doesn't really exist. They really listened, and I felt like that created a huge positive difference that wouldn't have otherwise happened. There was also, I think the National Hindu Student Forum organized this. It was like lectures essentially on Indian philosophy and Hindu philosophy. And that was sort of how to use that literature and put it into our lives in a positive way, especially because now that we're at home, we've got a lot more time to learn things, but it's quite difficult to find out these certain things, especially if you're a Hindu in this generation that doesn't have that kind of connection with spiritual aspects, especially if they're not in English. So this was a really nice way. I think the Nisan Temple also did, or I think they're still doing it, the Timeless Hindu series that's streamed every week. But I think the main thing that really stood out to me was the help that they had with funeral services, because that's something that not any other organization can do. I think it's just religious organizations that can help. And I know especially when the initial huge spike in COVID deaths happened, everybody was at a loss on how to conduct funerals and how to commemorate their loved ones, especially in a religious way. And I think the solace that was provided and the guidance that was provided by Hindu organizations, but I'm sure all religious organizations, was really, really important to the community.
Thank you. And Igor, how's it been within the Jewish community?
First of all, it's fascinating to hear how different faiths responded to it. So the Judaism has been around for over 3,000 years, and of course we do have a historic memory of different things happened to us over this time. And one has already been mentioned, the change from the temple Judaism to the rabbinic Judaism, when we had to when we had to adjust to the new reality of not having the one central place of worship in Jerusalem, to many synagogues in the world. And now, in a way, it felt a bit like this change in terms of the impact, because similar to a Muslim way of prayer, of worship, Judaism is dependent on communal worship. So our prayer is when Jews gather together to pray, and there is an individual prayer, but less so. But I think that there are two areas which we need to cover here. So one is prayer and classes, and the other one is support and care. So I think there's a famous phrase which has been repeated too many times probably. The society is judged not by the way it treats the strongest, but by the way it treats the most vulnerable. And the Hebrew Bible reminds always, so many times, that we do not oppress stranger, do not oppress widow and orphan, do not, in other words, treat the most vulnerable with dignity and provide them care, and try to help if you can. And we tried to help those who needed help. My synagogue is over 100 years old, so it means that the geographical spread is quite enormous. And also we had a significant number of people who had to shield from the very early days of the lockdown. It means that some of them had families and friends to help them with shopping and everything, but not everybody. So we organized, so within the days, we were able to find lots of volunteers, hundreds of volunteers, to help people, to phone people and just to ask how they are. So all the members of our community have been called by phone, and we asked people how they are, whether they need support and help. And those who needed it, we managed to help them with shopping, and sometimes just talking to people made huge and enormous difference. So because loneliness is not a myth for many people. And when it comes to prayers and all classes, like others, we had to move everything online. And our numbers, what is really interesting, increased. So we had more people attending our online services than we had in our building. And I already mentioned that the geographical spread of the community is quite wide, but the moving everything online really helped people who lived far away from the synagogue, or who could not come first to a synagogue because they had special needs, for example. And it made these people feel equal. So we are all now in the same place, and we made the decision quite early on so that the rabbis would only be, and all service leaders would also be in our homes, because it put us, all of us, in the same position. And it created, in this way, the COVID crisis has become a leveler for our community. And I think that there are lots of positive lessons we need to learn from this time.
So there's a couple of things that I wanted to ask on the back of kind of what everyone said, but I'll quickly go back to the point that you said about basically not supporting the people that don't need to be supported, but support the vulnerable. And has like within your communities, have you felt that that kind of line has become quite distinct, or do you think it's actually blurred and actually it's become a bit more of a embracing community towards each other rather than it kind of being a divide? I don't know how it's been within your communities, but I know certainly within my circles, it definitely feels that that distinction has actually really, really blurred because everyone seems to be helping each other up because, like you said, everyone's on the same level. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on that, how it's been within those communities. Go on, Sabah.
So, I've got the trend. So within our community, what Islam teaches that part of your faith is loyalty to your nation, and what falls under loyalty to your nation is service to mankind. So during COVID-19, we were able to set up a helpline where anybody can call to ask for help, whether they're vulnerable or they're shielding or they're at home and they can't leave. So we had the opportunity to help over 18,000 homes within the UK. And even now, spread across the UK, we're working with different councils. I know in Hampshire, the council contacts our regional organizer and we drop off medicine to people's houses who need help. So that's ongoing now. I think, Dee, you're right. I think the lines have been blurred in the sense that everyone is now on the same ship. We're all being told to stay at home. It can be a matter of days where you now feel like I have to stay at home because I've got symptoms. And I think in this situation, everyone was vulnerable. But it was nice to see the sense of community when everyone came on their front doorsteps and appreciated the help and the service of those key workers in the NHS. And it was important to have that sense of communion and unity, even if it was only during this time. And it is sad to say that this is brought something like this to bring us together as a nation. But we should now use this as a foundation to build on and grow together as a community, and use it as a building block to get rid of any differences between people and understand that as human beings, we have more in common. We have more in common than we have differences. So it was a time where we were all vulnerable, and it was a time where we needed to help every single person, regardless of their color, creed, gender, wherever they might be from. And it was a nice sense of unity, even though it was a time of difficulties for all of us.
Thank you. Samson, did you want to say something?
Sure. I think one of the greatest outbreaks that took place alongside, or maybe even because of COVID, was the outbreak of fear. Fear consumed the nation and a lot of people's hearts. And because of that, there was a lot of anxiety, especially right at the beginning, where we were getting, different views from experts, government. Nobody really knew what was really going on. So there was a lot of uncertainty. And it was in those kind of times that it really made it very almost even playing for everyone. Nobody was above anybody else. It could be a government official that could be struck by COVID. It could be the little guy down there, the nan, the grandpa. It just could be anybody. I remember looking outside of the window, and it's those times that things like faith really plays a huge part, to ground you and just to give you stability, to know that, no, look, regardless of what happens, see, there's a thing in Christianity, we talk about the assurance of salvation, that it's not necessarily that God will save you from the issue, but he will save you through the issue. So regardless of what happens, it's going to be okay. If we stay on, great. If we pass on, great. Either way, it's great. And it sounds such a moot point in time, but when you're going through and when you're supporting families who are calling you and saying, look, I've got a loved one that is in ICU, I've got somebody who's on a ventilator and things like that. One of the things that we found that we could do, because we encourage not necessarily in Christianity, not necessarily to gather, but to assemble. To do not forget the assembly. And there's a difference between gathering and assembling. You know, to gather is just to bring the pieces together. To assemble is to organize them. And then we realize that there is no distance in the spirit. Within the spiritual realm, there's no distance. I can speak here, and my brother is over there, and another sister is over there, and another one is over there. But we are connected together in unity. There's a unity of vision. There's a unity of heart and purpose, and we can get things done. So prayers were going on. You know, we had teams of people praying in fact, that's still been going on for almost 2 years now. Every single day, you know, praying for people that we know, people that we don't know. So people are just throwing in requests. Oh, can you pray for my auntie? We don't even know the auntie, but everybody's praying into that. And that's one of the ways that it does level out the playing field, because we all now, we are aware of our vulnerability. We're aware of our frailty. We're aware of our need. Sometimes mankind, we've thought that we have ascended to this level where we are beyond. We don't need anything. We don't need anyone. Right? Corona slapped us in the face, set us down, put us on the naughty step, and told us to just sit and just listen. That there are still things that are outside of our jurisdiction, but well within God's jurisdiction. So having the ability to just wrap your arm, it's like running to dad or mom, you know, just running into their arms and just say, okay, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Things are going to work out. With local communities really being that very tangible help for them. With the larger community, finding ways, you know, even with mental health, I ran a show on Instagram Live for over 4 months, where every single day just coming out, we called it the good news with P. Sam or Pastor Sam, you know, regardless of all the negativity that was going on media in terms of news of deaths that were going on. Every single day, I assembled a team of people together, journalists, virologists, and just together. And they would give me information of what is good that is still going on out there. What's the good news in the midst of this bad news? We're not being oblivious to the negativity. We accept it's happening. We accept people are dying. But we also want to report that people are being rescued. People are being helped. People are recovering. There are more people who are recovering than those who are dying. But it would seem as though there were more people dying than those who were recovering. And we recognize
like
that.
Slightly obsessed, sorry, Samson. It does feel like we're slightly obsessed with that kind of negative information, because I guess it's a bit of information that, I don't know, maybe it's human nature, maybe it's kind of just the way that our minds work, etc. But it always feels like once that negative's there, we kind of do hook onto that quite a lot, and we can't seem to let it go, especially when there is so many good things and wonderful things happening around it. And like even I know I had to say to certain people in my family to kind of go, can we just stop? Like, I know all that negative information, like I'm seeing it also with you. You don't need to then share it with me, and then I've got like 10 other aunties and uncles also sharing it with me. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I've had to shut my WhatsApp down just temporarily just to keep some sanity for it, but it's the way. So I want to come back to the technology side of things, because I think technology is a really interesting part of this whole situation. I also just wanted to say that the naughty step is obviously my favorite step. But I wanted to talk about what we've noticed with some of the research that's been done is that prayers in particularly have been Googled a lot more. I don't want to give an exact percentage, but I think it's almost doubled in a sense. As someone who's from Hindu faith, you know, I'm not a particularly religious person. I have my faith and I love that, and I'm more of a spiritualist, but even I have found myself, you know, looking at things a little bit more, or kind of saying a lot more prayers than I normally would. You know, normally I do a prayer once a month, and I would say it's definitely been a lot more than that, mainly because, you know, I have so many family members who are key workers, or, you know, I know so many people that have been affected by it, and you just kind of like, it's a very comforting thing for me. But I also know that, like many other people, I kind of dip and dive in and out of it rather than it being a constant thing in my life. But it does give me solace. I'm just going to go to Nirali and Igor to see how, like we said, you've definitely seen an increase. I know a couple of you have said that there's definitely been an increase on online activity. So I don't know, how are you getting more people into the community? Are you definitely like opening up to more areas?
There's definitely a lot more going on with technology around. I feel like there's so much more things that I can attend now than I could when everything was open, which has been really nice. Just going back to that question you'd said about the blurring of the lines and the vulnerabilities, this is related to the technology point. I'm not going crazy. So it's quite normal to see younger generations helping the elderly and the vulnerable in this kind of situations, but I've also witnessed elderly, vulnerable generations helping younger generations. So in the Hindu prayer, when you do services, there's something called the arti, in which which is basically you light flames. And to do that, you have basically something called a divet, which is what you light. And it's made out of cotton wool and clarified butter, so ghee. And that's what keeps it alight whilst you do your prayer. But that's something that my generation usually buys at the temple store, and that the elderly generation makes themselves. But now that the temples are closed, nobody could go out and buy that. So the elderly got together and started a Zoom session to teach the younger generation how to make these divets. And they were so patient and slowly taught us how to fold the cotton wool and dip it in the butter and make sure our shapes were perfect so we could actually pray. So it was really interesting to see that the elder generation are now using a lot more technology, and how they're also helping us. It's not more just that we're helping the vulnerable. They're also helping us, which was really phenomenal to see.
Yeah, my mum taught me how to do that, actually. Igor, how's it been within your community?
Yes, many people said to me during the last 4 months, the synagogue is closed, how sad. And it is sad, but I always said in response that it's not true. Our building is closed, but the synagogue is open and probably stronger than ever. And I think it is important. So on the surface, it is easy to assume that people pray more because they want a miracle or some kind of supernatural intervention. But I think it's more than that. I think that now it is easier for people to access prayers and in a way visit synagogues. There is something very pure about online prayers. They are very intimate, they are very accessible, and in a way meaningful spiritual experience can come to your home now, and which is, I think, made a huge difference for many people. In a way, your desk became your sanctuary, your screen became your prayer book, and your headphones or speakers became a synagogue's choir. And it is something that, so the synagogue came to people's homes, and there's still a sense of community online. And I think that people need a place where they are accepted unconditionally. And just because they are part of a community and nothing else, they don't need to deserve it. They don't need to do anything to belong. And I think that the sense of belonging and the sense of community and unity is what people really need during these times. I also think that the world before the coronavirus became increasingly individualistic. So we built more fences and walls rather than bridges. And now my hope is that the world will see that being together is the only way forward. And in a way that's, paraphrasing Lin-Manuel Miranda in the Hamilton. So the virus doesn't discriminate between the sinners and the saints, and it takes and it takes and it takes. And the difference between, so yes, everybody is in the same boat in a way, but the differences, especially in the early stages of the coronavirus, between people who have gardens, who live in large houses, and people families who live in one room with a shared kitchen, is enormous. And I think that, yes, the differences are blurred, yes, it's true, but it is really important to think about those who need support. And however difficult it is, the further we are in the lockdown, the harder it becomes for everybody. But I don't think we need to treat everybody equally, because some people need more support, and that's it. We're all in this together. Let's support each other. And the technology is just a tool how to provide it, but it should not lead us in everything.
So actually, that kind of brings us quite nicely on to technology. It's interesting because obviously we are in the age of, we can do so much more than we could before. And there are so many good and bad points to it as well, because it's, I mean, as much as I'm loving having you all here on Zoom and seeing all your wonderful faces, Zoom has become so much part of my life now. It feels like, oh, I just miss seeing people's faces and just giving them a hug, or even though we're not allowed to really touch them anyway. But it's just, it's one of those things that it's definitely helped, I think, like, especially with my mental health. It's definitely like seeing people I care about and being able to talk to them, and like, you know, even FaceTiming with my family, you know, like if I can't go see them, I've still got some sort of connection to them, which has been a real saving grace. But then also there's been so many things, particularly to Nirali, I don't know how this has been to you, but I've just seen so many fake news types of clips going around, particularly when lockdown came first, because in my community, all the aunties and uncle love to send a lot of rubbish through WhatsApp. And they're like, oh my God, look what's happening. And I'm like, this is 3 years old. This is nothing to do with right now. And they're like, oh, of course. But they've already sent it to the 100 people that are in their phone books. And, you know, that's created that kind of change. And then, you know, someone's sending me a message going like, oh my God, did you see what happened in, you know, Harrow, which is where I'm not that far from. And I'm like, yeah, but that happened a really long time ago, and that's got nothing to do with the situation. I don't understand. But it's that kind of fear mongering, I think, which has been the really kind of bit that I've been trying really hard to shut down within my family. But then, like we were saying before, focusing on those positives and making sure that we're using the internet and technology in a way that can really bring us forward. Like, you know, I've started to follow things that have prayers on them, because I'm like, actually, I used to, you know, I love motivational words, because it's one of those things that it's just a nice way to kind of wake up and see something really inspiring in the morning. So I don't know, like, how it's been. I know, Sabah, because I follow you on Instagram, and I know how in-depth your Instagram is, but I don't know if you want to touch on like what other kind of things that you've been doing through Instagram or through other bits of technology, and then maybe we can just wrap, like, we've got probably about 10 minutes before we do a Q&A. So if everyone wants to talk about how either their social medias or other ways they've been using technology to support their communities or just their loved ones.
Okay, me again, yeah?
Yes, it's you.
So during COVID-19, the young Imam came alive. I've always been alive, but I feel like during COVID-19, I was able to use my social media platform just to instill that hope, positivity, faith, strength, and just to reassure everyone that, yeah, God does love you, regardless of who you are or where you're from. And that's really important, because when you have the inner strength, you know that you can deal with every single thing that comes your way. In the Holy Quran, it talks about how God does not burden anyone beyond their capacity, which just shows that regardless of whatever comes your way, you have the strength to overcome that challenge. You have the strength to overcome that challenge, and then you are resilient to that thing happening again. So on my Instagram, I talked about mental health. I talked about how to help each other. And one day I even called my grandma to see how she was. And I put that on my Instagram page and said, look, I've called my grandma. She was over the moon. She said, look, I'm so happy you called me, because I can't see my grandkids. And the fact that you called me and I've heard your voice has made my day. And then my other two siblings also called my grandma, and now we bought her a smartphone, which she is struggling to get a hold of, how to even use WhatsApp. Yeah, that's a whole different conversation. You can have a whole Zoom chat about that. But yeah, I feel like social media was so important during COVID-19 to help people's mental health. Everyone was on the spectrum of mental health to some degree, whether they were really anxious or depressed or stressed, or they were in the middle where they were fluctuating between both, or they were on the other end where they were helping everyone else get through the difficult times. And we all had those days where we were feeling low. But it was important during those days where we reached out to people, and we only had social media to do that because we were confined in the four walls of our homes, to reach out and say, look, I'm feeling down. I need your help. And we were there for one another. And it was a time of happiness during times of sadness, where we were able to drag everyone through the difficult times. We were looking for that rope of hope, that spirituality, that faith. And that's why I think the word prayer rocketed in the Google search, as was mentioned by the Metro, because people were looking for a supreme being, because they felt like, hold on, we don't know what to do anymore. So social media was really important. And I was all over it, basically.
Yes,
So
I can see you unmuted yourself. So
yeah, I think I already started, talking about how, because I was not good at social media. I had them all, but I had them because, you just kind of have to have it there. In a person in my position, you've got to be there. is what you're told. But I was never really as active as I could have been on there. And the team around me have always been encouraging me, look, Pastor Sam, you can do a lot more. You can do a lot more. But I got lazy because of, people gathered and we came together and we assembled and found we could do that. So one of the things that this whole thing did, the whole lockdown and the advantage that technology brought was it forced someone like myself to grow. I had to grow in that area. And because of that, other people grew along with me. One of the things that Jesus speaks about regularly, he said, look, by this, all men will know that you are mine when you show love to one another, how you demonstrate that love. And this now became a focal point of meeting almost every single day. I became a staple in, like, when I say my community now, even the word community changes because it's no longer my local area. It's now not only my local area, but whoever is connected to me, cyber-wise. And this is now in different countries of the world. And I had the privilege of also bringing on different people of influence from diverse nations to have a collab or whatever, collaboration, Instagram, and that became a huge blessing to so many people. In the book of Proverbs, the Bible says that guard your heart with all diligence, because out of it proceeds everything that pertains to life. The things that give you life actually start from deep down within. But how do you guard the heart? It's the things that are coming in. They come in to poison the heart through the gates of the eyes, the gates of the ears, and things of that nature. And so we now needed to provide an alternative that was true, because not all facts are true. It may be a fact, but it doesn't mean that it is truth, because facts will change as science changes. Truth remains just true because it is, So we had to focus on truth and deal with facts, and just acknowledge the facts, but re-emphasize and reinforce the truth. Because we got 10 minutes to that, I think we'll go into somebody else.
Thanks, Samson. Nirali, Igor, is there anything that in terms of social media, technology, whatever it might be, that's kind of really helped benefited, and kind of what's been a bit of a hindrance in saying, and how have you got around those things?
So I think that usually with religious communities, we have a need for human connection. And I believe that the technological connection does now help to facilitate that human connection, which then helps to facilitate the spiritual connection. At the beginning of COVID, my uncle died, and I was in charge of organizing religious wakes, essentially, over Zoom to commemorate him. And this was just a few days of just an hour every evening of prayer. And if he had passed away not during Corona time, I would not have been able to see a lot of that family. A lot of that family would not have been able to commemorate him in that way. But there were people joining from India and America and Australia and here. And it was so nice to be bound with that spiritual connection. But also, like you said, with social media, there is also that downside. And I feel like we've got to almost have like PPE for the mind when we're using social media. And I know that social media cleanses are also extremely important when it comes to these things. But I think it's really helped with that previous question you had about prayer. So I've just started blocking accounts that give fake news, but there was a lot of religious organizations, especially Hindu ones, have posted things about prayer and how we can sort of use those concepts in our life. And there was this one concept that I read on an Instagram account, which was the concept of, basically, it's called nishkapat, which is basically means no facade. And with social media, with Zoom, often when we're talking to family members, we've just got to keep a straight face. And we've just got to say positive things, almost toxic positivity at sometimes. And it's quite British to just be like, we're going to just shove this under the carpet and keep calm and carry on and not really address things. And this was a time where when you're on your own scrolling through social media and it's just you and you're able to pray. But in Hinduism, prayer is not just a plea, it's a conversation, and it's a conversation with God. But in this conversation, there's no facade, it's nishkapat, and which means all cards are on the table and you're able to just pour your heart out. And it's so, so different to having a conversation over social media. And I feel like having that balance of having the social media conversations, but also allowing social media to facilitate these conversations with God and facilitating these prayers has been really super important. And I've also noticed some kind of unconscious trend in technology and prayer, especially with the White House Day of Prayer and a lot of the things that our government has done as well. There's just been an unconscious sort of bringing together of technology and religion and prayer, which has been really nice to see.
Thank you. I think any religious organization, any synagogue for sure, has a tendency to become very transactional. So here's our services, you can come and then go. Here's our classes, you can come. So there's some consumeristic approach in it. But I think that community is mostly about relationships and about forming these relationships and making friends, basically. And if you come to a community when you don't know anybody, it means that the community has done something wrong. It's not your fault. I think it's community's fault. It didn't. And in a way, the technology can really help with it, but it's also very limiting. For example, a huge part of Jewish prayer is not the prayer itself, but the time before and after, when people are gathering, and after, when they have a chat over, I don't know, a biscuit and a coffee or something. And this is crucial for forming communities. And in a way, Zoom can be very helpful for panel discussions, for teaching, but it is somehow limiting for this kind of relationships. I know that the social media moved forward, the equivalent of moving forward of social media over the last 4 months is equal to 5 years. So the the number of people using social media increased enormously, but the trend is not using it as a public place, but more and more people use social media for private conversations and not having this, sometimes toxic debates on Facebook, who is right and who is wrong. And, I read an article in the beginning of the lockdown, which says, if you're moving your classes online, please do a bad job. Otherwise people will get used to it too much. But I think that the future is somehow in the middle. It's combining both online world, the best of the online, and the best of the in-person. Because for some people, online works way better than the offline, than the in-person gatherings. And why can't we use both? So I think that the future for the world really is not online and not in person. I think that the future is hybrid. So I think it's more ecological, it's more inclusive, and it's true for social media, for everything. I don't think that the synagogues will close, but the online world will supplement and complement the in-person gatherings.
Yeah, I really agree with that, because I'm one of those Hindus who goes to the temple once a year. I will put my hands up to that. But I always go during Diwali, or if someone in my immediate family has passed and my mum's asked me to do something, or, someone in my family's asked me to go do something at the temple, and then I'll go. But I've definitely felt a more inherent need, because of the wider conversations I've been having and things that I've been looking at. And I've always had a difficulty within my faith, and particularly within my community, whether it be about acceptance, whether it'll be about philosophy, whether it'll be about kind of things that we value and believe in. And it's one of those things that I've always kind of just battled with throughout my whole life. And it's one of those things that I particularly have definitely questioned myself in the last couple of years, because, I'm a bit more grown up now. I'm not an arrogant child who's just like, no, you're not listening to me, I don't want to do that. But now I'm kind of I can't wait to go to the temple. And start afresh and start on a conversation, because people that may know me at UKTV, where I've spoken this about before, when I've gone to the temple, for some reason, this might just be my nature, I've always ended up in some sort of argument with the priest, maybe because it's like just different beliefs or different values, whatever it might be. But then that was also, you know, quite a long time ago, and it was a lot of things where I wasn't necessarily even talking to a younger generation that may be a bit more understanding or a bit more forthcoming with how they want to talk about or how they want to action that. And what's been interesting in the last couple of months, where I've been speaking to more people, especially younger people of every other faith, it's made me kind of go, actually, I can't wait to go back. And I'm kind of like, the temple's always been one of those places for me where it makes me feel very zen, if you know what I mean. Like, I went to Lincoln for university and there was no temples there, but there was the beautiful cathedral there. And my dad always said to me, he goes, you know, it doesn't matter what faith it is. He goes, a house of God is a house of God. And so he goes, if you ever felt alone or you just wanted to feel some comfort, just go. And I did. I took that up many times whilst I was at university, because I was in a very strange place by myself. I didn't have any connections. And I would just go sit in the back of the cathedral and, you know, for an hour or half an hour. And I really missed that feeling. And for many years, I've just not gone and done that without having a purpose, rather than just for the sake of going. But anyway, I'll open up. I don't know if anyone's got any Q&As. If you raise your hand, you can ask any questions to any of our leaders or to all of them. If you raise a hand, Ben will unmute you and you can ask a question. I don't know if anyone's going to ask a question now. This could be really awkward, guys. Oh, any questions? Oh, Bintal's in.
Hi. So I just had one question to, I guess, all the panelists. With easing and places of worship starting to open up again, how do you think you'll be able to maintain the impact that you made throughout during COVID? And I guess secondly, going forward, do you think you'll be utilizing technology a lot more as well? Just knowing the impact that it had globally and not just locally.
Oh, anyone want to pick that up? Oh, go on, Samson.
Yeah, I think what Rabbi Igor mentioned is just golden. That we've seen the impact of technology now, the positive impact, and it would not be wise to ditch that. It's about taking what is good about that and take that forward. We'll use that as we go on, even when we assemble in person. It doesn't stop you streaming. It doesn't stop you still, utilizing those things. You can still do that. However, I think one of the things that we've been taught or we've learned through this, in terms of with the places of worship opening now, is not taking each other for granted as well. Really appreciating the brevity of life, and not just the fact that it is short, but the fact that it is beautiful. We are created in God's image, and He does love every single one of us, and therefore every opportunity that we do get, I'm a very huggy, touchy-feely person as well. So the opportunity, whenever the government gives us the go-ahead, the opportunity to do that is something that we should cherish. So every handshake, when the opportunity comes, you cherish it. And I think that's an impact that will be lasting. That is a really positive thing that takes us even further on from here.
Nirali, I thought you were going to say something.
Yes, I was just going to say, with the impact lasting, I feel as if the coronavirus impact, the whole changes, has happened for long enough for people to just imbibe it into their lives now. I know that staying at home, figuring out what day is quite difficult, but having the sermons and the services and the live streams every evening has just made me remember, oh yes, this is Monday, this is the day. And I feel like people are now using it as part of their lives. And something that I've just noticed, and I assumed that now that everything's opening up, it will just start to die down. But the live streams of the services, originally they had 3,000 devices logging in, and now they still have 3,000 devices logging in, despite people going to work. And it's almost as if people have now made time. Originally, it was quite often that, oh, I don't have time to go to the temple, I've got to go to work, and that's more important. But now that we've found that solace, and we've almost been forced to find that solace and to incorporate it, we've now like taking the initiative to incorporate it into our lives. So I feel as if it's just made a positive and permanent impact in our communities.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think we do always run the risk of these being kind of passing fads, but I think it's kind of like you say that I think people have built it into the structure of their lives. And actually, for a lot of people, including myself, where I've gone, actually, there's a real importance to this. It's similar to like that mental health part of the angle of kind of going, people are becoming a lot more aware of how much they need to look after their minds as well as, you know, the people around them. And it's something that I've definitely, and I'm sure everyone else has, learned the very hard way. But I've noticed that particularly in lockdown, going, God, I just need to take days where I just need to shut off from everything. And that's okay to do that because I need to look after my own well-being. And I'm definitely building that into my life a little bit more. And I imagine that's how people are doing it within the faith communities, is kind of going, this is something that actually has brought me a lot of solace, and I'm not just going to use it when I need it. Actually, this could be doing me well all the time. Sabah, were you going to say something?
I was, you know, the rabbi used a fantastic word. I loved it. I made note of it. The word hybrid he used. Yeah, he smashed it. I think you're going to have to use social media and also still go into the places of worship, because as Dee said, a hug, as you described it, is a hug. And hugs release stress. It makes you feel better. And I think having that communion with your community is really important, because it gives you that sense of unity and family. And it is a physical place to go to, and a shoulder to cry on, because sometimes you do need someone to talk to face to face, because you can't get rid of that. That's really important. But hybrid is really important, social media, and definitely still going to the place of worship and having your communities congregate together for prayers.
I don't know if anyone else has got any questions. Or sorry, Igor, do you want to jump first?
Yes, just briefly. I think it's important to say that in Judaism, a special day, a day of rest, is Shabbat, which is Saturday. And I am a liberal Jew, so I can interpret the law in a way that, I can be inclusive and I can use technology on Shabbat. But I'm thinking about Orthodox Jews, those Jews who follow the law in a way more strict, in a way stricter way. So they can't use technology on Shabbat at all. They can't turn the computer on. They can't live stream their services on the day of prayer in a week. And I mean, speaking about opening our synagogues, our places of worship, it is crucial to open these places. So I think it is important to think not about us liberal Jews who's always been streaming for years now. I mean, the live streaming of our services is not new at all for my synagogue and for many synagogues, many progressive synagogues. So also what's important to say is that this day, the Shabbat, is a day of rest. It includes the day of rest from social media. And I love this concept because now, in a way, I've lost something. I've lost this day of without computer, without screen in my week. It's just one day a week. It's not much. But this sense of, you know, the world will survive without me. That's fine. Nothing will happen. So, you know, the world will remain, maybe not the same without me, right? But it will be all right. And I think that's going forward, it is important to open up, of course, only if it's safe. Because there is the saying from Talmud, one who saves one life saves the entire world. Because it's very easy to see just numbers. You know, number of deaths, number of people who recovered. Behind each number, there is real life, real family, real friends. And I think that we need to make every single effort to save life. If we need to close for 4 more months, I think we will do that because it saves lives. And also, it's what is important for Judaism is that the prayer is dependent on communal experience, which includes communal singing, which is at the moment forbidden. And even though 30 people are allowed to be in the places of worship now, it makes it almost not worth it to come to a synagogue when you're not allowed to sing, and when you're not allowed to do something which is crucial for Jewish prayer. Zoom works way better for that, or YouTube.
I don't know if we've got any other questions, but maybe we could do some like round the table final thoughts, and then we can always just catch up a little bit later. So I don't know who to go to first. Sabah, since you've been jumping in every time, do you want to come in with some final thoughts? I put you on the spot, haven't I? I mean, I know you'll be fine.
I can't win with you, D. Final thoughts. I think I'll end it on the motto of our community. It's probably the best motto I've come across in the short 26 years of my life. And that motto is love for all and hatred for none. And I think I live by that every single day. And when you live by that, you're able to accept and understand and take people for who they are and what they believe in. And in this day and age, it's so important to unite. I say this all the time, unite together regardless of who you are and where you're from. And as a community, we work stronger together.
Thank you, Sabah. Samson, any thoughts from you?
Sure. Since we're introducing mottos, I'm going to include one motto that I live by. Is that the greatest investment in life is the investment in a life, and it's the celebration of any life. Every life is important, and if we can, like Rabbi mentioned, if we can save one, then let's do that. Let's go for that. Let's appreciate. And we see it with the NHS. Sometimes it is when things, when our back is against the wall, that we begin to realize the precious things that have always been there all around us. I've done way too many funerals for my liking, and it's at funerals that you see, this outpouring of emotion and a sense of realization and appreciation for life. And I would pray that we don't wait for another pandemic before we celebrate life, before we recognize the value of everyone that is around us, and really let them know that you value them. Let them know that you love them. Because when God showed his love for us, he gave us his son, so that whomsoever believes in him can not just have life, but also have it more abundantly. So we really need to celebrate the life that God has placed all around us.
Thank you, Samson. Nirali, any thoughts from you?
On the theme of mottos, one of the quite prominent modern Hindu gurus was Brahmuksai Maharaj, and his motto that I've tried to live by now during this period is, "In the joy of others lies our own," and that's something that quite a lot of the members of our community are trying to live by, and making sure that we help each other, like you've all said, helping each other and pushing ourselves together towards a larger, not just human, but more spiritual connection, and looking not to see people for who they look like, for their gender, for their race, but to see them with their soul, which is a prominent concept in Hinduism, to see the Atma, the soul, and to see that, and to see their joy, and to help them, and not to open our homes, obviously, but to open our hearts to them and to help them. And I think that's the final message.
Thank you, Nirali. And Igor, anything from you?
I was tempted to say, with great power comes great responsibility. Superman, but I'm not going to do it. So my motto will be the phrase which is written above my head on my. It's written by a scribe on the parchment. "B'makom she'ein anashim ishtadel liot ish." In the place where there are no people, try to remain human. And I think that the key word here is try. So we do make mistakes. Nothing is ideal. We are all real people, but we ought to try. We ought to try to for our society to be better. We ought to try for our communities to be together. We ought to try. And I think that this is the key motive for me. I don't have a choice. I have to try.
Thank you. So I'll just quickly wrap up because I can see that people will probably be moving on. But I guess if we're going to go down that motto route, mine, personal one, has always been, always keep faith. And whether that, you can kind of perceive that in any which way you want. I've always struggled with religion for myself. So sometimes it's been religious, but actually it's more about just having faith in people, having faith in my loved ones, having faith that we're trying to do the right thing, having the faith that we're moving on to better things, and we're evolving for the positive. And even though there is so much negativity and there is so much horrible things out there is also just so much good. And it's so important to remember that. And so for me, I've always said, always just have a bit of faith, you know, and whichever way you want to direct that, that will always steer you right. And I can thankfully say that it's always steered me quite right. So that's it really for me. So firstly, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has joined the call, and thank you to Sabah, Samson, Nirali and Igor for joining us today. It's been really great conversation, and hopefully we'll have a couple more, because I know there's a couple of other topics that we want to talk about. So thank you, everyone.